it's one person's dream and the other person kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead. Tag, yeah. 4, 3. Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer, Sales Coach. I want to welcome you to our Friday session. As always, if it's 11:30, I'm going to be in front of the cameras here. In the FYI column, we're actually going to be moving our Friday session not only in location, but in time. So you'll be seeing that coming up. It's actually going to go to the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 8 o'clock, but you will fill everybody in at that point as well. So love for you to join us, as we often say. It's not lost on us that the contribution you're making to your sales education comes back to you many, many times over. And as I've said before, and will continue to say, I believe that these next 12 months are going to be absolutely the most challenging. More challenging than we had in COVID. There is so many, pressures that are just in the world and being in sales. Thanks, Cody. Is that everything we need? Perfect. Thank you, bud. So the idea is that in terms of the pressures that are on, we as sales, we kind of have this dubious situation because we're expected to, we eat what we kill. So if we sell a lot, you eat a lot. If you don't sell a lot, you don't. We don't have the benefit of kind of hiding in some mid-level portion of a giant company somewhat immune from a lot of stuff. And I believe the challenges of the world are likely going to get worse in the next 12 months. I mean, obviously, we don't have a handle on inflation. Thankfully, gas has gone down. But the reality is that the reason is really the only influence is pricing pressures because less people are driving. The retailers now are forcing the prices down in an attempt to garner an ever-diminishing amount of clients. So what appears to be heading in the right direction is kind of heading there for all the wrong reasons. It would be like, the price of eggs going down because nobody's buying eggs because you can't afford the eggs. So the retailers have to continue to reduce the price to pull people out of the market that are likely going to buy eggs. Now, on the surface, it would seem like a good thing the cost of eggs is going down. The reality is it's going down because less people are buying eggs. The retailers now have a glut of eggs, and now they have to do something with them in an attempt to move it. So we live in this very cyclical world. There's lots of moving parts out there, and I'm saying that if you don't take your sales seriously, and when I say seriously, over 50% of the time that you invest in your normal business day has got to either be closing business, certainly looking for new business, making contacts, cold calls, all of the things that just kind of go into business development. And yet most people, that's the thing they like to do the least, right? That's the kind of hard thing, and I see it all the time. I don't like to prospect. I don't like to go to networking events. I don't know how to do social media. I don't do this. I can't do a video. And I hear a lot of the defeatist language, but I will tell you, most of the stuff is relatively easy. Now, is there a cost? In many cases, no, not at all. There might be an investment of your time in education, which I believe is the best investment to make. And yet, again, most people in a challenging situation won't do that. So, batten the hatches. It's going to be rough as things go on, but that's why we're here. And I will have likely Mr. Wechter joining me the next time we do a session. He's got the pretty much all clear, or hopefully we'll have the all clear on Monday when he goes back to his surgeon. So we're anxious to have him rejoin the family here. So I send him all your well wishes and thoughts and the emails I get and the contacts that hopefully everything is going good with him, which it is. Today's session is going to be called Musketeers. And interestingly enough, I've not done this session in Tucson. All right, and I've been here at Tucson since 2015, so I literally have not done a session in 7 years. Of course, it'll be fabulous because most of what I do is fabulous. But, it's interesting because this one kind of got pulled out of the archives relative to a conversation that took place at a networking event actually this Wednesday, 2 days ago. And it was interesting, and I was talking to someone we had gotten done. We had a big group, and we're having lots of conversations. And a young lady who was a first-timer there came up and said, I really don't know how to network. Right? She just started a business. Come in. Come on in. Come on in. We got a crazy layout, so find a seat where you can. So what had ended up happening was a lot of the conversations that kind of got built up, she didn't know how to network. And when she said she didn't know how to network, I said, well, tell me what you think networking is. Well, she thought networking is something that you do. It's like a jacket that you put on, or it's like a coat that you put on. In reality, networking is nothing more than making a connection with people in an environment. But the first thing you want in a network environment, and for those that are writing it down, write this down, affinity groups. Affinity group is the best way to connect up with your networking. So regardless of the industry that you're in, your ability to connect up with people comes in one of two ways. Way number one, you create it, which means that you could self-produce an event, you could send out invitations, you could rent the medium, you could market it and promote it, and you can do all of those things. Or you can connect up with an affinity group. So an affinity group could be a Rotary is an affinity group. A Chamber of Commerce is an affinity group. Elks Club, any one of the BNIs, LBNs, depending on where you are in the country. These are all affinity groups, but the universal thing between all affinity groups is they put the people in the room for you. So when you go to a chamber or you go to a chamber event, the Chamber of Commerce puts those people in the room for you. So whether you're the speaker to that group, they put the people in the room for you. Whether you're just an attendee for that group, they put the people in the room for you. So what you want to be able to do is have a good, strong, compelling way for those that are not networkers. And I will tell you that networking is an acquired skill. Most people small talk. It's amazing how difficult it is for them to create any kind of small talk. They stumble over their words. They don't know what to say. They're not fluid in it. They get very tongue-tied. And, of course, then their anxiety goes up because they think that they're doing it badly, although there's really not a badly that you can do it. It's just making contacts. So the idea of the Musketeer philosophy will give you some tools that will help you in all networking environments. Now, when I use the term Musketeers, obviously, the book that came out, and I think everybody has the three Musketeers in mind. But in our session, there's the phraseology that they used in their famous slogan, which is what we're going to use to help us develop our networking approach using a Musketeer philosophy. Anybody want to knock that off what it is? You don't all immediately have your 13th century literature that's on another useless crap that I've learned in school. One for all and all for one. That was the Musketeers. And the idea was, and the Musketeers were like the Secret Service. So if you use the Musketeers, hi, come on in. No problem. No problem. This is just fun for us. Right? So the idea of the Musketeers, at the time, they were kind of like the Secret Service. Right? So the Musketeers were responsible to the crown. They were kind of like the special police would be to the crown. And they were a very unique group because at the time, and again, they were the best of the best of the best of the best. They were kind of hand-selected. They would have gone through military training. They would have gone through weapons training. And again, they would, at the time, would have been the best of the best of the best of the best. And we actually kind of adopted our Marine philosophy of leaving no one behind based on the Musketeer philosophy of all for one and one for all. They believed their philosophy would have been to save one person. They would willingly allow all to die. Now, if you think about that just in terms of logic, that probably doesn't make much sense. But if you were the one guy in trouble, you'd be pretty happy to know the rest of these guys are coming no matter what. So we're going to take that philosophy, we're going to adopt it into a networking scenario. So for those that are taking notes, I want you to write this down. All for one, and one for all. So if you're thinking in a networking environment, why would that make sense? How does that actually work? Because we're going to apply something which is taken out of 13th century literature, and we're going to apply it in a selling situation. Well, the simplest explanation, all for one, essentially says you're going to bring one lead that may potentially be large enough that everyone can take advantage of it. So let me give you an example. Say, for example, you had a connection with Fry's grocery stores. Right? Now, for the people that aren't in Arizona, Fry's is owned by Kroger. So any place in the world, it's going to be Fry's, it's going to be Kroger's, which is the other one? They own like 4 or 5 of them. But it's a giant chain, right? There's tens of thousands of people that work there. And if you have a good connection at Fry's, there's a very good chance that the vast majority of people that you meet may have something that they want to do with that relationship. So you meet somebody that sells copiers. Well, there's a pretty good chance that Fry's has copiers. Or you meet somebody that sells industrial brooms. Well, there's a pretty good chance they're going to need industrial brooms. And they're going to need toilet paper. And they're going to need light bulbs. And they're going to need, and you go blankety-blank office furniture. And you go down and down and down and down. But the idea is, if you have those types of relationships, when you go into a networking group, you could potentially bring in one customer, but potentially have an application for everyone that you talk to. That's where the all-for-one philosophy comes in. So if you adopt the Musketeer philosophy in networking, you would develop relationships with larger clients as frequently as possible. Now, it's much easier because when you've got a large employer, especially here in Tucson, where there are many Fry's enterprises or Fry's stores, it's not unusual to know someone who works at Fry's, right? You've got somebody who employs thousands and thousands of people. It's not that much of a stretch that someone in your world is likely going to be connected. Now I'm using Fry's as an example. It could just easily be a large person. Raytheon is a big provider here, right? We have Amazon facilities here in the Tucson area. So there's lots of organizations that have lots and lots and lots of people. So for the people that are uncomfortable in networking, the first thing that they say is, I don't know who to talk to. I don't have anybody to refer them to. By the way, these are the same people that have 5,000 people on their Facebook. Right? You look at their address book on their phone and they've got 9 zillion people, right? But they don't know anybody, right? They spend all day on Instagram and yet they don't know anyone. Now I would venture to guess that you probably do. You may not think of it, but you probably do have more than enough. You don't need a lot of people. One of the things that we talk about is what you have to have is a good, steady group of people, and we do some supportive cubes that talk about that in terms of strategic partnerships and networking and things like that. So the first thing I want you to take in mind is the all-for-one ideology when you're going to networking. And by the way, if you're not networking, start. That is the #1 absolute strongest way that you're going to be able to come in contact with people because it strikes on a couple of critical things. Critical thing #1, write this down. Every dollar that you've ever gotten, you've got from somebody else. Every dollar you ever, even if you get it from a company, somebody says yes to you and writes the check. Every dollar that you've ever gotten, you got from somebody else. Now, the nice thing about that is I'm making air quotes now, the somebody else's that I'm making reference to, you know what? Every day they just show up. You don't even have to invite them. They just show up. They're out there in the world, right? They're in line at McDonald's, they're in line at the bank, they're wandering around the streets. You can meet them everywhere else. These are the someone else's that are the people that have given you the money previously. And yet most people are not experts in what we call someone else, right? They may know their business, they may know a lot, but in their mind, they're going to sit in their office and they're going to send out 1,000 emails. Now, on the surface, that seems like a good thing, right? You go in your office, you shoot off 1,000 emails. Here's the reality. If you get 3 or 4% open, you're actually outpacing the national average of emails. You know, there was a period of time where anybody who's seen the You Got Mail, right, Tom Hanks, right? There was, AOL actually did that. I had an AOL account. And when you got mail, it said, you got mail. Could you imagine what that would be like now if you were in your office? And you've got, 100 people. It would be everybody like, shut up, shut up, shut up. So finally, they took that out. It doesn't say that anymore. And there was a period of time when you would get 5 or 6 emails a day, and it was a big deal. Look at, it's like a fax, right? Oh, the fax machine buzzed, and you would all run over like bees to the honey, right, to see the fax, because fax was a big deal. You know, and you would get this much mail at home, and then you would get 5 emails, and now it's switched. Now it's not unusual to get 200 and 300 and 400 emails. And how do most people get rid of their emails? They don't even open them. They look at the subject line. So the whole ideology of looking at email or social media, if you think of it like this, I have 8,000 people on my social media, 8,000. They say at any given day, 10% will post. That means out of my 8,000, 800 are going to post something. If every single one of them just posts something that I would have to look at for 1 minute, 60 seconds, do the math. I would be investing 800 minutes. So if I just use 60 minutes in an hour, I would now have 12 hours of constant 1 minute at a time posting. So the people that jump on board, it's like, oh, I do social media posts and I do this and I do Instagram. And I'm like, how's that working out for you? Well, not very good. Okay, well, what are you going to do differently? Be out in the world. See the people, STP. Every dollar you've ever gotten, you got from other people. I believe that professional selling is still a face-to-face, eye-to-eye, belly-to-belly business. And I watch these people that sit in their office, and I'll call them at 9 o'clock, and where are you? I'm in my office. Is there somebody writing you a check? No. Get your ass up. Get out into the world. this is where the people are that are going to give you the money. Why? Because every dollar you've ever gotten, you got from somebody else. You better be an expert in someone else. And the beautiful thing about it is in most major areas, again, they just show up. You don't have to even invite them. And there's a myriad of things. I will tell you, there is opportunities literally on a daily basis for those that look to go to networking events and meet other people. And just by de facto of what they are, they're saying, I'm coming to this event to teach you about me with an understanding that I want to learn about you. Well, that seems like a pretty fair deal, doesn't it? All right, you want to learn about me? That's cool. I want to learn about you. Why? Because we all have 200 people circling our universe. And it's very possible that the person that you're talking to may or may not be a prospect for you directly. But there's a very good chance that if you do a compelling job, you're going to be able to uncover opportunities that they have. And their introduction is far more effective and valuable than your introduction. So when they say, hey, I met this great guy over at an event, he does blah, 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 you probably should talk to him. There's a far better chance that you're actually going to speak with that person than if they see one of your random social media posts or a random call or anything like that. Networking by far is the most effective way. But again, they don't teach this in school. There is no place where you go to learn effective networking. It's one of those things where you get in the trenches and do it yourself. These will be some great tools for you to use, and we're going to talk about some other ones. So here's what I always suggest. You want to have big arrows in your quiver. And you go to give, not to get. When you go to a networking environment, do not go to get. Imagine you're in a room with 50 people and you all want to sell something. What do you think is going to happen? Right? Everybody's shoving business cards to everybody else, and yet nobody's doing anything. So when I go to an event, I go to be sold. And here's my favorite words. I say yes to everything. It doesn't mean that I buy everything. It's I say yes to everything. Oh, you do this? Great. Tell me about it. Why? Because I want you to sell me. I want you to sell me. Here's why. Because if you're only going to sell me when a couple things happen, I get a better deal or I get a better program. It's in my best interest that you sell me. That's why I say yes to everything. I'll give you the greatest example, and it just happened 2 weeks ago. We had a new person come to our networking group, and she works for American Family Insurance. Now, I heard American Family Insurance. They're one of the big carriers, right? And she goes, I sell auto insurance. Now, I'm watching her talking to people, and they're like, oh, yeah, I got auto insurance. I'm like, okay. So I go up to her, and I say, hi. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my assistant send you my declaration page tomorrow. And one of two things is going to happen. Either A, you're going to give me a better deal, and that makes me happy, or I'm going to determine that, in fact, I have a better deal now than what you can give me, and that's going to make me happy too. But no matter what happens, I'm going to be happy on the other side of this conversation. So here's what she does. So Amy sends her my declaration page. Now, for my Tucson Land Rover, $2,435. That's what we pay a year for my Tucson Land Rover. She comes back, she gives me a better program, $1,650. And I mean, I literally went, compare. $1,650. Now, this is clearly going to be a time when not only do I say yes to everything, but this one I'm going to buy too. Why? Now, imagine you did that with everything in your world. Everything is constantly scrutinized. And the worst case scenario is if she wasn't able to beat it, I'd say, hey, I gave you a chance, but now it's my turn. Now I need you to introduce me to the people at your world that make decisions on sales. And I've said that 1,000 times. Because now she's what? Obligated. And you want your prospects to be obligated. That's why networking is so good. I don't hope to get business. I don't hope to get introductions. I create environments that require the introduction. Because either she sells me and I win, and she still introduces me to her boss, or she doesn't sell me and I win, knowing that I still have the best deal, and she still introduces me to her boss. How do I lose? I don't. Professional selling is very tactical and very strategic. Nothing is haphazard. Nothing is random. Nothing is unplanned. So I want you to be comfortable saying yes to everything. It doesn't mean that you buy everything. See, I'm always willing to give people a limited amount of my time. You know, I love to use Shark Tank, right? Everybody knows Shark Tank. Perfect example, right? So here's Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban has $10 billion. If I had $10 billion, I would sit naked on my pile, right? No, but he doesn't. He's willing to go out and give a little bit of his time to listen to mostly idiots, right? Because I've watched the show. A lot of these people are, whoa, security, you can see them wavering in the background. But every so often you get somebody and you can see their faces. These smart guys go, whoa, whoa. You see them like looking around like, well, this is something, right? This is my next $50 million. That he got some guy who 5 minutes ago was in his basement in Indiana. I'm always willing to give a little bit of my time to see if you have a better mousetrap. So what that means is every person that you talk to, I want you to say, tell me what you do. Tell me what a good prospect for you looks like. I can sell you better than you can sell you. Why? Because if I say you're good, it's the truth. If you say you're good, it's the ramblings of a salesperson. If I say I'm a great well, in my case it's different. But if I say I'm a great sales trainer, I'm fabulous. I already know that. But most people, when they say that, they don't have that confidence in the same way. You want people to do your work for you. And when I tell people that, it's like I showed them fire for the first time. They're like, wow, say yes to everything. But most people are so terrified of being sold, right? As if most salespeople have this God-given ability, when you give them a crappier deal of what they have, you're just going to zombie out. It's like, yes, master, I'll sign anything you want. I've never seen that happen. If it doesn't make sense, most people are smart enough to go, you know what, doesn't make sense, not for me, thank you, bye. I want you to say yes for everything. But when you go to networking, I want you to have something to bring. I want you to have something of value. The all for one basically means you don't have to have 50 potential leads for 50 people you meet. All you need is one that likely uses a lot of things, and it's not that hard to find. Now, the other option is one for all. So either you could bring all for one, which means you're bringing one lead, one large user that could be a lot of people, or you could potentially bring a lead for every individual person. Now, depending on the size of the group that you're with, depending on what you're doing, that may make some sense as well. There are situations where you might know individual people that would speak to the listening of a new person you meet. So I could go in and be talking to somebody about my Fry's contact, and they say, well, I want to buy a house. Well, I know a real estate person too. Well, that's okay. I have no problem bringing two things. And yet most people don't think like that. In a networking situation, they don't see the obligation. A lot of people like BNI and LBN and a lot of these lead groups. And I have nothing against them, by the way, because I speak at probably most of the ones in the area. The problem being is there's no obligation of a lead. There's the hope of a lead. You hope to go there and somebody's going to give you an opportunity. But there's no obligation. And here's the problem. Hope is not a selling strategy. Hope is what you do when everything else fails. I would rather have a strategy that says, I'm going to go in my mental Rolodex, I'm going to find a lead and introduction for you, and I always do it first. Why? Because I prime the pump. I start the process. I go to my neighbor and I say, hey, Bob, I know you do something with computers. What does a good prospect for you look like? And Bob says, well, blobbity, 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 blobbity. And now I go find a lead for Bob. Well, now what's Bob's obligation to me? He needs to find one to me. It's like tennis, right? I give you one, you give me one. I give you one, you give me one. And if you don't give me one, the game ends. I find somebody else to give the leads that I have. But most people, again, don't think like that. They don't understand that I can bring one big person for a group of 50 people. Or I could potentially bring in 50 people depending on the circumstances. But it's great to have choices. But most people see leads, especially in a networking environment, in one of two ways. They see what we call a buying unit. Buying unit. Okay. Or someone that would forward their interest. So let me give you an example. If I was a real estate agent, what would be a good referral for me? Take a shot. Somebody wants to buy or sell a house, right? If I sold houses, the best lead for me would be somebody who wants to buy or sell a house. That would be a buying unit. The problem being is most people, when they go in their mental Rolodex, if they don't know that person, they don't do anything. So you meet a real estate agent and you go, nope, can't think of anybody. Don't know. Nope. Don't know anybody who wants to buy or sell a house. That's it. Can't help you. Right? Give me your card. Which goes into that big wad of cards in your desk and the thing that eventually when you get a new desk, you just throw it out anyways. The other option that you can look at is somebody who could forward their interest. So for example, I may not know somebody who's a buying unit, but I may know somebody who can forward their interest. So for a real estate agent, somebody who could buy or sell, who's looking to buy or sell a house would be a buying unit, but who else would they want to talk to?
People that fix houses?
Exactly, right? And maybe a good lead for them is a carpenter, right? So they go to list a house that maybe has a landscaper, a mortgage company, a painter, a roofer. All of the things that surround mortgage. But see, the problem being is most people don't get that.
Solar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, solar, right? But see, most people don't get that. They don't think like that. They think in terms of a buying unit only. So they bring very little value. But you could meet 50 people, and I guarantee with a little bit of effort and thought, you know somebody in your world that that person should know. And when I bring that person into the relationship, now they're obligated for me. Again, it's like tennis. I give you one, you give me one. I give you one, you give me one. So that takes the hope out of it. So for me to get 50 leads, what do I have to do? Well, I have to give 50 leads. But that's easy because we know all of these people that are in our thing and all the thousands of people on, and all the people we got on Friends and the 900 million people that we have in our email address book. And yet most people never think like that. They don't realize that right in front of them is the very pool of people that they need and they want to have, and yet they don't take advantage of it. Regardless of the industry that you're in, there's someone who you should be connecting to, right? So if you're working with somebody who works with the senior community, well, what would a buying unit be? A senior, right? Makes sense, right? What are other people who could forward their interest? Who would be another thing? Maybe somebody who sells durable medical equipment. Maybe somebody who does financial planning for seniors. Maybe somebody who sells ramps and does home modifications and all the other things that would touch into the senior community. That would be someone, although it's not a senior that would actually buy from you, it's at least someone who can forward their interest. And it's interesting because if you think of it like this, I want a lead from everyone, right? There's certain medications out there where the active medical dose is not taken through the entire month, right? So if you have to take certain cancer pills and certain heart pills, right? They're going to say, we want you to take the medication for, 3 of the 4 weeks. But in the last part of the week, we don't want you to take your cancer pills, but we don't want you to forget to take a pill. So we're going to put other pills in there. We're just going to put random, nothing medication. It's not even medicine. Just basically a sugar pill. So it reminds you to do that. It reminds you to take your pill so you never get out of it. Well, it's the same way in this. If I'm just building a mechanism that reminds me to make sure that I give leads. Givers get, givers gain. The more I give, the more I get. And yet most people, again, in a networking environment, they go there to sell, right? They want to sell everybody there. Well, when you try to sell someone, is their defensive posture high or low? High, very high, right? Why? Because they're afraid of being sold, except me. Because I say yes to everything. So everybody I meet, I'm like, yes, fine, let's get together. Give me your card. Tell me what you do. Yes, fine, I'll have my stuff to you on Monday, right? I'll have my assistant call you. Absolutely, I want you to look at all my crap. Why? Because you may have a better mousetrap. But see, I would never know that if I didn't say yes to everything. But it doesn't mean that I buy everything. But regardless if I buy, now you're obligated to give me a lead. You're obligated to introduce me to your boss, your company. Why? Because I gave you the shot. Now that kind of, again, when I tell people that, it's like I showed them fire for the first time. They're like, and I see these puzzled looks and they're like, how does that work? That shouldn't work. And I'm like, yeah, it does. I do it all the time. But the reality is it does change how you think about being in networking, how you make connections. So you want to have a long, deep bench, not only of things that you can provide to buying units, but people to introduce them to. And it's really not hard. If you sat down with somebody's business card that was a real estate person, how long do you think it would take you to come up with 5 or 10 things that they would benefit knowing? Minute, maybe 2, possibly, maybe longer. Here's the nice thing about it. When I contact that mortgage company and say, hey, listen, I just met this great lady. She's a real estate broker. She seems like a real go-getter. And I told her I had a great mortgage person to introduce her to. And now that person seems flattered. But now who do they owe now? Me. Now they owe me a lead. And I remember, because I go in my day planner 30 days in the future, and I write a note. Bonnie owes me a lead. Now, I'm not kidding. And on the 30th day, here's what it sounds like. Hey, Bonnie, it's Don. Hey, how'd it go with Missy? Oh, that's great. I'm glad that you guys had the opportunity. Hey, Bonnie, I'm looking in my checkbook, and I can't attribute $1 to you. How are we going to change that? Now, I say it comically the first time. There isn't a second time. Why? Because my relationships are hard fought. My relationships are hard to develop. I'm not going to randomly give them to people who don't give them back. But what I find is that if I have enough going on in the world, if I have enough of the churn, people coming back and forth, every day you'll get 1, 2, 3 leads, and it doesn't seem like it should be this easy. And yet it is. We do it all the time. Networking, be out in the world. Let's keep going. I want to make sure we got a lot to cover and not much time to cover it in. So buying units and someone that can forward their interest. Again, go to be sold. Doesn't mean you have to buy. Say yes to everything. Again, it's in your best interest. But if you go to these things to be a buyer, you'll drop the defensive posture of anyone. And here's what I will tell you. You're only going to actually be a buyer if it's in your best interest. If somebody gives me a worse deal than what I just gave them, they apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, Don, I can't beat what you have. Hey, no problem, I understand, right? We gave it a shot. What the hell, 50-50. All right, when are you going to introduce me to your boss? Well, they're obligated, right? I'm their customer, right? I gave them a shot. Let's keep going. All right. I want you to play Cupid. Here's what playing Cupid is. There's always people in your world that should be connected with other people in your world. Now, most people are very narcissistic. You know, look at the success of Facebook, right? You know, there was a period of time, like my daughter's 33 years old, Cassandra. There was a point in time that if somebody took a picture of my daughter when she was a baby, I'd have whacked that guy in the head, right? We're Sicilian. We get away with stuff like that all the time, right? Because there was something like icky. Don't take a picture of my daughter. That just seems icky. Right, 33 years ago. Well, for some reason it's okay now because, you know, all the kids are splattered on, and then the bathtub pictures, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell happened with people, right? 33 years ago, this was verboten, right? But now it apparently is okay. The idea of playing Cupid, when you're in a networking environment, is I want you to take it upon yourself to put people together. So if I'm talking to someone and they do something with automotive, and I find somebody else in the same room that does something with automotive, I'm going to walk that one person over to the other person and says, Bob, you and I were just talking. I understand you're in automotive. I just met Pete a minute ago. He's in automotive too. I thought you guys would be a good meet, right? A good introduction. And I take it upon myself to do this. But here's what I say. Well, it looks like you two are going to be able to make some money. I want in on this too. But here's the thing. They're both going to say yes. We're all going to chuckle. But they're both going to say yes. Why? Because I've taken it upon myself to put two people together. This could be your neighbor. This could be the person down the street. This could be somebody you meet at a networking event. I have a standing rule. I'll pay $100 to most people that I can find somebody within 1,000 feet of their door that has no idea what they do. Now, I know 1,000 feet seems like a long way, right? I'll say 100 yards. That's 300 feet. I'll bet you $100 I can find somebody. Now I had one guy say, I live on 40 acres in the middle. I'm like, don't be a dumbass, right? The idea ultimately is we have all these people in our world that, we just kind of, neighbors, we just kind of wave to, and it's like, yeah, he does something with computers, right? He probably knows the exact person you want to be introduced to. You probably have a relationship that would be beneficial to them. Here's another thing I ask. Are the people that are listening today, or the people in the room, right? How many of you have actually ever got a lead from your mother or father? Assuming they're done. Okay, 3? Your parents don't like you, right? Right? And it's interesting. No. And I'll do this in front of 100 people, literally, and we'll have 3 hands come up. Now, here's your mom and dad. They know what you do, right? Your business card's on the magnet on the refrigerator. And yet, they don't. Brother or sister. aunt or uncle, cousins, nieces, nephews. Most never do anything, right? They know what you do. They know what a good prospect's for you, and they do nothing, right? I do family networking a lot where I'm literally brought into big families to do the very thing that I'm saying right now. Now, it's interesting. That's not the case in every family. There are certain cultures that if you didn't do business with that person in your family, you'd be excommunicated. A lot of the Middle Eastern and Jewish families, it's very incestuous in terms of working together. So if you got a mortgage or you bought a house and you didn't get your mortgage from your cousin, well, that would be it. You wouldn't be allowed to come to Christmas. But there are times now in other cultures where you intentionally don't work with your cousin. Go figure. Why? Right? It is. It's really weird. It doesn't make any sense, and yet we know that to be the case. So when we understand the idea of playing Cupid, I want you to do that. Why? Because if I put two people together that I think should be together, now both owe me. So I'm going to call my neighbor and say, hey, Bob, I know when we met last, we were having a beer over at the block picnic. You happened to mention that you sell some computers. And it occurs to me, I've got two big clients who use tons of computers. If I was to introduce you to those guys, you think you might be able to introduce me to blah, 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 blah? Right? Maybe somebody in your world would benefit from financial service, maybe even yourself, right? I'm priming the pump. I'm giving first, right? I'm not asking him to do something unless I do it first. And he can say one of two things. He could say, oh, absolutely, yeah, if you introduce me, I'll be happy to. Or he could say, no, I don't want to. Well, you get to decide. That's the beautiful thing about having choices. Again, in a networking environment, playing Cupid, bringing people together, allows you to position yourself to get opportunities from both. Whether you're at a networking group, whether you're just putting two people together out in the world. I love to do that with networking relationships, where I'll look at all the attendees' names and say, wow, this person should really talk to this person. And I'll call them, and it's like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to Bob. And I'll call them, hey, Pete, Bob's going to be calling you, and this is why I think you guys should talk. But now Bob and Pete both owe me. And I always would rather have an obligation for a lead as opposed to a hope for a lead. Let's keep going. All right. Any kind of member list, those are also good as well. Let me write this down here. I'm just going to write list. I'm going to write member next to it. Now, a lot of people are involved with chambers of commerce, Rotaries, what are some of the other, Elks Clubs, what are some of the other ones? BNIs, LBNs, I mean, there's a zillion affinity groups of every possible imagination. And we recently, when I moved here from Michigan, I live in Oro Valley here in Arizona. And when I moved here in 2015, I joined the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce, right? Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce. And the day that I joined the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce, they gave me the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce member directory. And you know what I did? I called every single person. And I said, hi, I just joined the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I just moved here 2 months ago. And I don't know anybody, and I don't know anything. What do you do? Because I hope to be able to know a lot of people and a lot of stuff. What does a good prospect for you looks like? Well, okay, great. If I find that for you, would you feel comfortable introducing me to somebody in your world, possibly yourself, that might be interested in sales training and sales coaching services or be interested in some increased revenue? You know what 100% of the people said? Yes, absolutely. Why? Because they just paid $400 a year, just like I did to join the thing. But it's funny, when I call them, they're like, I've been in the chamber for 10 years. We never did this. And I'm like, well, why? Why? You just paid $400 to join, just like I did at some point in time. Why would you not take advantage of connecting every single person that's out there? Again, I just showed them fire for the first time. Here's what they say. We're going to do that. Really? I'm the big brain in the room where I was the only person that said, here's a directory. I don't know. Call these people. Because we know it's like the 80-20 rule, right? You got 500 members. Only 50 are going to show up at events. The other 450 join for whatever reason, faithfully pay, and never take advantage of it at all. You want the member list, the contact list, when you go someplace, when you do something. I think it's okay to say, hey, I just did this too. I just joined this group. I just went to this event. I just did. Again, most people never do anything. And it always surprised me because so much of it, for example, I tell people all the time, do a Google search for whatever your client wants to be. So if you want to deal with seniors, do a Google search that said senior stuff in Tucson. And I will tell you, something will pop up that will be worthwhile. You'll get something like the Oro Valley Senior Community, right? We have a senior center. And twice a week, the seniors show up at the senior center. And you know what the senior center is always looking for? Speakers on senior topics. And do you think maybe financial matters would be of interest to the senior community? Probably. Probably. But the thing is, but nobody ever does it. And that's, I'm not saying you don't do it, but I'm saying that most people don't do it because I don't know if it just sounds too easy and like it shouldn't work, or they try to get this like, oh, I'm going to send out 9 million emails and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, wait a second, just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. We do an entire session called Moving to the Left. And this is a great time, and I'll give you the Sniglet version of what that is. Because most people, especially younger ones, and I'm not picking on you guys, it is what it is, right? You know, they grew up in a world where communication was text, emails. There wasn't a lot. I mean, I grew up at a time, and I literally purchased the first cell phone ever. It looked like a World War II walkie-talkie made by Nokia, right? The big giant. You want to see what it looked like? Watch any Wall Street movie. All right, but the idea is that most people had grown up in that environment. They've grown up talking within the platform. So if you're doing LinkedIn, it's an in message. If you're doing Facebook, it's the messenger in Facebook. Even the dating apps that are out there, right? You go to Match.com or any of those types of things. You're not a name, right? You're a number. And all your connections, all your conversations are within the platform. And at some point in time, if both parties decide they would like to go further, then you jump out of the platform and maybe you exchange email addresses. And maybe you talk a little bit about on email. And then one of the two says, well, maybe we should text. And now you move left again. So you went from in the platform to an email. Now we go to the left again, and now we're in a text. And somebody says in the text, well, maybe we should talk on the phone. And now we move from the text to the left, and now we're on the phone. And someone, after talking on the phone, they say, well, maybe we should meet face-to-face, which is the gold standard, of course, for every selling environment. Well, what if you started at face-to-face? What if you started on the phone? Right? Have you ever met somebody when you say, hey, listen, here's my phone number, give me a call. And then you get another dumbass email again. Right? Or you say, hey, listen, let's talk on Friday, and you get another text. Why? To me, again, I believe professional selling is still a face-to-face, eye-to-eye, belly-to-belly business. That's never going to change. World leaders are not going to solve world problems with a text. They're going to do it face-to-face. And that's why I tell people, if you start there face-to-face, networking groups, things like that, all the other bullshit, you've just skipped all over it. You're at where everyone hopes to get to. Well, if you start there, or at the very least you start on the phone, then you've bypassed all this other silliness. It seems like if nothing more than just the sheer value of your time would be worthwhile. So any kind of lists, any kind of directories, any member lists, things like that. Copying cards on a single handout. We do a thing called a hit list, which is nothing more than a 1 through 10. So what does a good prospect for you to look like? And here's the problem when a lot of people go to a networking group. They stand up, hi, my name's Bob, I'm a blah, 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 and 30 seconds later they sit down. Okay, now remember that the next day, right? You're in your office, you got a million things, and Bob's gonna cross your mind. You forgot Bob the minute he sat down. But if you have a hit list that has all the information about the people that Bob's interested in, and by the way, if you've got a hit list with 8 or 10 different people or different types of people on it, the 2 or 3 that are in the beginning are very easy to find, right? Those are the real obvious ones. That's the person that says, I'm looking for somebody who wants to buy or sell a house. That's pretty obvious. The real meaty stuff, though, is at the bottom, 6, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are the ones that are real meaty. So when they get home the next day, when they've long forgotten about you, and they pull out your hit list because you gave it to them, put it on a materials table, something like that, they're like, oh, yeah, Bob. Oh, yeah, I know a doctor who might be interested in investing into it. Now, Bob didn't say he was looking for doctors investing in commercial property for their offices. His hit list did. Because you can't remember most of the things when you're talking in that 30 seconds. And I'll give you even the example that started me using this years and years ago. And I think everybody's seen that show, the Antiques guys. It's the 2 guys that drive around the country in their car, right? And they get out, and they kind of just drive these back roads, and they look for barns that are just overflowing with crap, and they go and they knock on the door, right? You know, and they would, and for the first 3 seasons, here's what they would do. They'd both be standing on the door, and they say, you know, here's their big, you know, antique truck behind them and stuff, and they would tell the homeowner, yeah, we buy antiques, and we're looking for like dolls and old bikes and stuff like that, and the guys goes, yeah, don't got any of those. Right? And then they get back in their truck and they drive down the road. They look for another overflowing barn. Season 4, though, they smarted up. They said, well, there's a lot of stuff that we buy and we're looking for. We just don't remember when we're standing on this guy's front porch. We know his other hand's on a shotgun behind the door, right? What we're going to do is we're going to list all the stuff we want on a piece of paper. And when we go there, we're going to hand them the piece of paper. And it's going to say old toys and gifts and old signs and blah, 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 blah. It's got 25 or 30 things. And they just go, hey, we're antiques teaser, we're looking for this stuff, and they just hand the paper. The guy goes, oh yeah, I got a bunch of these in my barn right there. Something they would have never thought about. And they take them to the very barn where the 28th thing is that they would have never thought about standing on their porch, and they have a treasure trove of stuff exactly what they want. No different than your hit list. It's your way of communicating the universe of people that you want to deal with. Because, for example, this real estate person, here's what they're going to say. Somebody buying or selling a house, because that's obvious, right? But how about somebody who was recently widowed? You think that person might eventually get into the house sale? Probably, right? Don't happen to know anybody who's getting married soon. Don't happen to know maybe somebody who's going to be having children. Maybe they're pregnant now, friend, family member, somebody like that. Maybe you can introduce me to that person. Why? Because they are likely going to look for a house. But when you're thinking about that in your 30 seconds, you're going to be like, hi, I'm Bob. I'm a real estate salesperson. No. Have your hit list. Don't assume they're going to remember you. Most people are pretty unmemorable to start with. Have a newsletter. Newsletter. See, when I meet people all the time, I will ask them if they would like to be on my sales training newsletter. It has tips, it has techniques, it has all kinds of little cool stuff on it, tells you what's going on in our world, what we do. But what if I went and said, hey, would you mind if I sent you just a shameless self-promotion each and every week, telling about how great we are and all the crap we have to sell? Would you be okay if I just sent that to you in your already overcrowded, already overcrowded email? Yeah, most people are going to be like, yeah, I don't want that. Right? Ever been at a store when you're buying something and they say, well, can I have your email address? What do you say? Oh, sure, I don't get enough crap on a daily basis. Please put yours in there. The vast majority of people that I see are like, yeah, we don't want that. No. Have a newsletter. Why? Because you're experts in your field. So when I'm talking to somebody, I'm going to say, I have a newsletter. And by the way, whoever you are and whatever you do, you're experts in your field. I guarantee, even if you're just starting, you're smarter than the vast majority of people in whatever it is that you do. And if you struggle with what that newsletter will look like, I will help you. That's the stuff we do all the time because you want to have that top-of-mind awareness, right? They may not be ready to buy now, and maybe you don't do it every week. Maybe you do it once a month. But it's that top-of-mind awareness. It's you kind of knocking on their door when, every so often so they don't forget about you. Absence does not make the heart grow fonder. Absence makes you easier to forget. I know that runs contrary to all the romantics in the world, but it is what it is. All right? So a newsletter is a great mechanism in a networking environment because it gives you a reason to get their name, get their contact information, follow up, and make it of value. Whatever industry that you're in, make it of value. And I have people say, I don't know what to talk about. I'll show you how to find stuff, right? I'll give you a great example. You want great content for your blog, for your Twitter, everything? Do a daily Google search for anything in your industry. Anything in your industry, right? One of my clients is the Tucson Paranormal Society. They're my client. And the interesting thing about it is, because they didn't know what to put in, I said, Google UFOs Tucson. Google Ghost Tucson. Google cryptids Arizona. And get this huge library of different language, and you'll be amazed at the stuff they get. And here's what I get back. Oh my God, Don, there's so much stuff. Right? As if this is the first time I've ever done it. Right? There's great content out there, and that's why your networking has to have a front end and a back end. It's that constant reminder. But bring value. It's not just a disguised sales pitch. Bring actual value to what you do. And if you can't find value, I can help you get there. The top 10 reasons why everybody should have life insurance. And once a week, you pick another reason. So in your newsletter, we're going to do reason number 2. Next week, it's reason number 3. Next week, it's reason number 4. That's just something. The 5 things you should never do. The 10 things you should be telling your kids about money. There's an unlimited amount of content. We're only limited by our creativity. By the way, and the number 2 reason that you should have life insurance is because you will likely leave somebody behind that would really, really, really benefit. My wife loves me dearly. We've been together since she was 14 and I was 18. That's a whole different story. We'll talk about that later. Right? But here's what she says. She goes, if you ever died, my heart would break. I would weep over your headstone every single day. But you know what she also says? She goes, I'll rub that $5 million check against my broken heart, and maybe I might feel a little better. Right? Now, I know that she's kidding about that, but not at all. Right? That's why you have life insurance. Not for you, for the people that you love, you leave behind. Story for another day. The idea is that I want you to do something. Having a newsletter forces you to do the things you should already be doing. Developing content, creating events, having meaningful reasons to talk. Right? You're an expert in your field. What do experts do? Experts teach. Cody's going to be a professor. Cody, how long have you been in this industry?
A year.
And now you're Professor Cody at a local college. Is this a great country or what? Now, come on. But now look at all the people that have radio shows and write, blogs, and they're deemed as experts. Why? Experts write. Experts teach. Experts research. Get yourself involved in that same thing. Let's keep going. A weekly conference call. And by the way, you may do a conference call for your group or anyone else. So if you're part of an organization, so for example, one of my clients is Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Of course, they have multiple weekly conference calls to talk about the market and circumstances and blah, 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 blah. You have your own. Why? Because when you meet someone, you can say, well, you know what? I do a weekly conference call every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And I would love to have you on as one of my guests, right? Again, giver's gain, right? I'm priming the pump. I'm giving to you first, right? When you ask somebody to be a guest on one of your events, you know what happens? They're flattered, right? Their ego gets stroked. Now, I'm not saying you're doing it for a disagreeable or undesirable or some kind of, clandestine effort. They probably have great information. I believe that every person has special magic. I believe that every person has an amazing story. I believe that any guy out there, if Tom Hanks played you in your life, he would get an Oscar. Every woman out there, if Julia Roberts played your life, she would get an Oscar. I believe that every person has special magic. But the thing is that if you build it, they will come. Thank you, Kevin Costner. If you build it, they will come. Right? So now, by the way, now I've got something to talk about in my social media. How I have a newsletter. I would love to put you on my newsletter. How I do a conference call. I would love to have you be a guest on my conference call. And then for that whole half hour, we talk about you. You. What's going on with you? What your thoughts are about the world, the industry, the marketplace, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what it is. We can always circle it back around. You know how much it costs to do a newsletter? Nothing. You know how much it costs to have a conference call? Nothing. Yet most people won't do it. Why? Because most people are lazy. Right? I will tell you, getting rich is hard. It's a full-time job. It's 7 days a week, probably 10 hours a day. That's why so many few people do it. So I want you to start thinking, and when I say networking, it's the beginning and the end. It's the opening, right? I hear from a lot of times in sales, people will say, well, can you help us close, right? We can't close. We're not closing enough business. It's never how you close. It's always how you open. If you open properly, the close is a foregone conclusion. I will tell you, if you do this kind of stuff with the people in your world, it will appear that they are throwing money at you. And I always have people say, oh, no, it can't be that. Yes, it is. It is absolutely that easy. Does it require effort? Sure it does. But does it require effort forever? No. Once you create the process, it becomes self-fulfilling and self-regulating, all right? Have a quarterly event. Have some kind of an event. Why? Because you have to have something that garners people's attention. We live in a world of relevance. What have you done for me lately? There's so much noise in the machine that's out there. How are you going to be heard above the din of everything that everybody else is doing? Right? It was social media and television and broadcast. I'll give you a great example of just the noise in the machine. There was a period of time, I was born in 1961, so I kind of became aware of the news around 5 or 6, like most kids do, right? They see the news, they know they hate it because they like cartoons. And I remember at that time, Walter Cronkite in the middle 60s, he was the guy, right? You're young, go look at YouTube, right? Walter Cronkite was the guy, I mean, he was the god. And all you would saw when they put the camera on Walter Cronkite was him. That's it, just him. Nothing else, just him. Now put on CNN, put on MSN, put on whatever you want. You know what you're going to find? The face in the middle. There's going to be 4 crawls going across the bottom, right? There's going to be this thing spinning in the corner and the temperature down here and something over here. There's too much noise in the machine. You need to have a reason for people to look at you. Producing and generating information on a conference call, an event, right? It could be something as simple as just a cocktail party, right? You don't even have to do it. Figure a place to do it at. Invite the people that you want to talk to. Maybe it's based on age. It could be based on gender, right? I have one that's an alumni, right? He works with all people at U of M. By the way, there's a huge amount of University of Michigan people here in Tucson, right? I never knew that, right? This guy does an alumni thing. People loved it. Create an event. Give people reasons to look at you. And now the nice thing about it is it gives you content for all the other stuff that you should be doing in your networking-ish kind of thing. You should be writing a blog, right? It's very simple. You should be doing your Twitter. Why? Because it's the world that we live in. You want lots and lots of reasons. So when somebody gives you a business card in a networking event, here's what normally happens. You say, listen, let's get together over coffee where we can learn about each other. Anybody ever done that? And you go and you sit over coffee, very well-meaning, and you think there might even be an opportunity to do business together. What happens the vast majority of the time? Even though you got together under the auspices of learning more about each other. Nothing. Nothing. Despite the fact that there's a great potential for you to be able to do things. You drive these relationships. Some can happen organically, most don't. But most successful people realize that every person in their world has a social value. They have a, and I don't want to make it sound like it's a monetary value, but every person that you meet in some way, shape, or form, I believe that can contribute positively to your world. If you connect up with, co-create something. You meet somebody fine and say, listen, well, let's do something together, right? Come on my conference call. Let's co-produce an event, right? We'll co-do a blog. You see a lot of people that are doing podcasts, right? Where you'll have 2 or 3 people involved in the podcast. Again, you're only limited by your creativity, but if nobody, it's almost like the world wants to keep itself a secret. And then they're surprised where nobody sees them. Right? They're not outgoing. They sit in their office and wait for the phone to ring. And again, and the world is out there, and yet they never go out to it. Or they're not ready for it. They go out unprepared. Right? I see people all the time, and I'll go into offices and I'll talk to salespeople. In the back of my mind is, you're not really, really, really going to meet somebody like that. Now, you don't have to wear a tux every single day. I get that. But, you know, be ready. You never know. And this is a truism. And when I say this in front of people, a lot of times it catches them off. You never know if the next person that you meet might change your life. And I say that all the time. Be prepared for that. Because you never know if the next person you meet might change your life. Everybody who is married, there was 1 minute before you met your spouse for the first time. There was 1 minute before you met your best friend. There was 1 minute before you saw your child born. There was 1 minute before your car accident. There was 1 minute before, you met your newest best friend. You met your new boss. There was 1 minute before, and yet most people are so horribly unprepared. The salesperson with no business cards, right? I see it all the time, right? I'll show up dressed like this, and now people will apologize. It's like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Why? Here's something you can control 100%. Be prepared 100% of the time. You never know if the next person that you might meet might change your life. And the worst thing that you can do, by the way, in a networking group is when somebody says, what's going on? And you say, not much. Boom! That's me shooting myself in my foot. That's the kiss of death. If you don't have an exciting life, they're not going to help you. When they say, what's going on? You should say, oh my God, you know what? We're putting something together, and I was thinking about you last week. Now, I'm not saying lie. I don't want to teach you to lie, cheat, and steal. Right? But what I will say is if you have a lot of great stuff going on, yeah, we're doing this new conference call. I thought you would be fabulous for it. We're going to do blah, blah, blah. You know, and I want you to do, you know, we're doing an event, and we're going to bring in speakers or a panel or blah, 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 blah. You'd be great. You think, I don't know, you might get a little bit of business out of these people? I think you will. I do all the time. I believe that sales is elegant. I believe that business is elegant. It is as elegant as you create it to be. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to spend a lot of money. You may not be making a lot of money right here initially. You will if you follow the stuff we're talking about. But I believe that sales is elegant. I believe that conversation is elegant. And I think all the things, especially in a networking environment, realize we are social creatures. We seek out our own kind. In fact, it's interesting. If you look at a lot of the mental health issues and people, unfortunately, that harm themselves, the reason in many cases that they cite for harming themselves is an ostracization from the community. You would think that self-preservation would be the strongest of all things, that you would never do anything to hurt yourself. And yet, ostracization from a community is the cited reason for people that harm themselves. We're social creatures. Seek out those environments. Create them. If you can't find what you want, create it. If you think you want to have a networking group and you can't find what you want, create it. If you think you want to do an after-hours thing and you can't find what you want, create it. I will tell you there are people out there that think exactly like you do. And every one of those people has 200 people circling their universe as you do. So let's keep going. I want to make sure we get through the list. So some kind of an event. Do something. Something that attracts attention to yourself. And by the way, it can be as bizarre as you choose, right? I mean, I was a speaker one time at a tattoo conference, and it was fabulous. I mean, some of the artwork, it was literally fabulous. But you would think that that really wouldn't be a place for a sales trainer, and yes, it absolutely is. Some of these tattoos were $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000 to have this amazing artwork done. Create something. Find out what you like. Build it. I guarantee there's other people behind you that want it. Let's keep going. If you're not in a Facebook or LinkedIn group, get in one. All right? Any type of online community, get involved. You know, there's a lot of opportunity for you to jump on somebody else's bandwagon. You may not necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. There might already be out there exactly what you want, but you don't look for it, therefore you never find it. So do a Google search for what you want, right? So maybe it's, you know, I like fly fishing, right? First thing I did when I moved here is I looked Tucson fly fishing. Interestingly enough, I found a whole community of people just like me that live in the desert like fly fishing where there's no water. You know, if you live vicariously. Well, in a perfect world, well, actually I go to Silver Bell Lake, by the way, right? Keeping in mind Silver Bell Lake is part of the Tucson man-made fishing system. It's no deeper than my head. If I walked to the deepest part of the lake, you'd see my dome cresting the water. All right? So much for the man-made Tucson fishing system. So an event, join a group, right? The group could be online, it could be individual. Again, we're social creatures. We seek out our own. But the interesting thing about it is when I say this in this particular session, I'm amazed by how many people don't go to the very things that they're invited to do. I can't tell you how many times, you know, you look at a chamber or an organization like that you pay to be involved with. And I see it all the time where I'll say, well, can you tell them what group you're in? Oh, yeah, we're part of the XYZ chamber. Oh, yeah? Well, how is it? Oh, we never go to anything. And now, you know, and you want to say, well, then why did you join? Right? It's like the guy that thinks if he joins LA Fitness and he has the membership card in his wallet, he's going to lose weight. Right? Well, when did that ever work? Well, it doesn't work. So if you're going to be involved, be involved. And it's interesting when I'll call somebody and they'll say, well, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. You're right. You're right. You know, they got a thing coming up, you know, tomorrow. I'm going to go. I'm like, that's a good start, right? Okay, so I'll call them the next day. So how did it go? Well, I didn't go. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you probably had like an amazing family function where you got together with your loved ones and you laughed and had a really memorable time. No, I just came home and watched TV. Yeah, but you had like amazing food, right? You had like a gourmet meal and stuff and snacks. It was really cool and stuff. No, I just had some leftovers. Yeah, but you really worked, right? You were probably making calls and doing business stuff, right? And calling your list and stuff. It's like, I was going to, I didn't. And they wonder why they don't get to where they want to be. I'm not saying this is easy. This is hard, but it's very doable. And yet most people won't give the minimum amount that they need to keep going. Let's hit the last two things, and then we'll go around the room. All right? Introduce every new member to the group. So if you're part of something, be the beginning. Now, when I say if you can't find what you want, make it. Now, why would it be beneficial for you to make what you want? Why would you want to be at the head of it? You want to take a stab? Everything that happens in a group goes through you. So if you're the leader of the networking group, head of the chamber, whatever, everything that happens in that group funnels through you. You have contact with anyone. So if you're just a member of a 600-person chamber, you're one of 600. If you're somehow connected to the welcoming committee, the membership committee, the development committee, something that's going to get all the new people to funnel through you, you think that might be a good idea? They're feeding you brand new people into your world, and maybe, I don't know, just maybe you might be able to make a sale through it. I think you probably can. And yet again, most people don't do that. Most people don't do much at all. If you're going to be part of something, be part of something. If you're going to be involved, if you're going to commit your time, you're certainly going to commit your dollars, be involved. But I come back, if you can't find what you want, make it. I will tell you there's a whole universe of people that absolutely think like you, that are being underserved and underdeveloped. Whatever it is. It could be a women's group. It could be a church group. It could be a sports group. Whatever it is, there are other people, again, social creatures. And that's why when I talk about networking, and I use that session, we talk about going to the left, the networking environment allows you to start at the place where the best case scenario ends up. So if you might make a prospecting call, make a cold call, maybe they want you to send them an email, some information, blah, 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 blah. You're hoping to get to that face-to-face. In a networking environment, you start with the face-to-face. Can't help but make sense. Networking of all the things we do is by far the strongest. Again, if you can't find what you want, make it. So we got a little bit of time. Let's go around the room, and we'll start with ladies first in the corner. What did you get from today's session?
Number one, the hit list, and number two, asking what's a good prospect for you to look like.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, again, people are naturally narcissistic. I will tell you, when you bring somebody, when you call that person to bring them a lead, their defensive posture will fall so far they'll let you babysit their kids. I'm not even being kidding about that. They will absolutely, sure. But if you try to sell them, their defensive posture goes up. And when you look at a hit list, all it is, really, it's just a piece of paper, right? And it has hit list in your name. And it has all the people you want to be introduced to, right? And on the bottom is your name and phone number and email address. So who would be a good prospect for you?
Anyone looking to make part-time income, who wants to be mentored, looking for leadership, and...
Too generic. People aren't that smart. They're not going to connect the dots.
Okay.
Well, they won't. And I'm not picking on you because I see you a million times. See, most of us have these great big ideas. You know what you want? Single moms. Single moms who want to stay home with their kids and yet make more money. Now, if I'm a single mom and I want to stay home with my kids and I want to make more money, that speaks to the listening of people. And yours isn't wrong. I'm not, and Terrence and I are friends. I'm not going to pick on you. But don't assume people connect the dots. Right? I want it to be really, and the reason I have 10 of them, because your first one is real obvious. Right? But when you get down here to 8, 9, and 10, that's where the real meat is. That's the stuff that nobody ever thinks about. Like, why do you want to be rich? You know why people want to be rich? To give it away. Now, I know that sounds absolutely stupid. You bust your ass your whole life and you give it away. I give away crap loads of money. right? Look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is one of my idols, and you've heard this story before, right? So Warren Buffett has 44 billion, right? Think Don naked on his pile, right? So, and he's like the third richest guy, at the time when this happened, this was like 5 years ago, third richest guy in the United States. Bezos and, you know, Microsoft guy, Gates, and, you know, a lot of them kind of were at the top. So what does the third richest guy in the United States do? He gives 2/3 of his fortune to the richest guy, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now think about that. This guy busts his ass his whole life to get $44 billion, and he gives 2/3 of it away. Now, again, I think I could live quite happily with the remaining third. But think about what most people do. You accumulate a lot of wealth, and then you give it to your grandkids, you give it to your kids, you give it to your family, you give it to save the whales. Right? Everybody has a different motivation. What do you want? And yet most people, right, they will never get that in financial planning because they're talking up here, right? I don't want my wife to worry about one thing, God forbid I die. Period. I want her to want for nothing. And I do everything I can now today to make sure that happens. My granddaughter, I will have a granddaughter here in the next 3 months, right? I don't want her to worry about college, right? I don't want my 2 grandsons to worry about college. I don't want them to worry about anything. Absolutely not. Why? And I can fix all that. By the way, we have all the ability to fix it right now. Life insurance is an amazing tool. If you don't have it, you should. It's the absolute linchpin of any financial plan, in my humble opinion. But when you do a hit list, the 2 and 3 here are the real obvious ones. This is the meat, though. This is going to speak to the listening, and your hit list wants to have a level of specificity. Right? The people who have nothing. If you're over 60 years old and you're one of those people that has, what were you telling me, Cody, like $1,000 or something like that? Be afraid. Be very afraid. I would put that on my hit list. If you're if you're over 60 and you have $1,000 or less in retirement, be very, very afraid. You should call me tomorrow. Right? And that isn't a selling plan because you know why? I mean, I'm not making a sales pitch. Here's the deal. You will die. Period. That's it. This is not, there's no if. You will die. And you will likely leave people behind. So that's why your hit list wants to speak to the listening. And it doesn't matter what you're in. Whatever industry you're in, your hit list is different for you. Mine as a sales trainer and sales coach is unique for the things that I do. But that's a great takeaway. But speak to the listening. That's okay. I'll get it. No, it's okay. But the idea is speak to the listening, right? What do your people want to hear? You don't have to color code it. They're smart enough. They know it. Right? Nobody wants to have stuff blown at them, right? The emperor's new clothes, yeah, you're naked, yeah, you look great. No, you don't, right? You're fat, right? So what'd you get?
Every person has at least 200 people in them.
Yeah, actually more. But it's interesting because look what we call friends nowadays, right? I always kiddingly say this. I have 8,000 friends on Facebook. 4 are going to come, well, 5 if Terrence comes. 5 are going to come to my funeral. What we call friends nowadays is worthless, right? You know what you need? You need 16 motivated and committed people. We do an entire session on that. We talk about networking cubes and strategic partner. We should do that for your groups separately. That would be fabulous for them. Yeah. Networking cubes and strategic partner cubes. See, the thing is that most people is what we call a mile wide and an inch deep. They know a lot of people a little bit. But instead of being a mile wide and an inch deep, I'd rather you be an inch wide and a mile deep. You know less people, but far more intimately. These are the people that care about you. They'll hunt for you. They'll look for you. You know, I've said this on camera before. My version of a friend, this is my definition of friend. If I call Cody at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, I need you, if the first thing he says is why, that's wrong. The first thing he should say is, where are you? Because if you call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a good reason. I got a really, really good reason. Cody calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, Don, I need you. It's like, where are you? I'm already out the door. Got my keys in my hand, right? I'm starting the car as we speak. What's up? Right? But I'm not going to make a decision of whether I get my keys in my hand and leave until he says, well, no. The thing we call friendship and silly. We'll help you. There's better ways to do it. What did you get? You guys are like writing feverishly. You got to see these guys are like,
So you always need to have a reason.
yeah.
You need to give someone a reason.
Well, we live in a reason world, right? Nobody's, gone or I'll give you the greatest example, right? This is 5 years ago, right? So I have a guy who's selling me copiers, right? And well, he sells me like copiers and toners and stuff like that. We've been buying from him for years. He does a really good job and stuff. So I get this message, right? And so he says, hey, Don, we haven't talked in a while. Just wanted to call and say hi. Now, I call every person back. I respond to every email. Every email I get goes in one of two directions. If it's obviously just spam, I'm going to get rid of it, of course. But if you send me an email, a personal email from you to me, I respond to every single email. I respond to every single call. Even if it's, because most people don't do that. You send them an email, they have no idea whether you got them or not. Right? So I respond to every single one. So so he says, yeah, I just wanted to call and say hi. So I call him back and say, hi, I got your message. What's up? And he goes, hi. And in my mind, I'm going, you really just called to say hi. Now, what he should have said is, Don, we got a lot of new stuff you might be interested with. It could help your productivity, better copiers, faster copiers. We do more stuff. Now for a high D like me, I'm very ROI. It's like, dude, yeah, I'll give you 10 minutes of my time. You got something that can make me more money, do things faster? Sure, pitch me, right? I say yes to everything. You don't got to kind of, just want to say hi. No, you don't. You could care less if I was dead, right? You called me because you wanted to sell me something. Don't lie and just say, I'm calling because I got new great stuff to sell. And I will call you back and say, great, what new cool stuff do you have to sell? Now, I'm going a long way to make a point. But that's the kind of things that most people do. They start to lie in the beginning, right? Have you ever heard a salesperson say, well, I'm not here to sell you anything? Liar. Of course you are. That's why you called. You don't care about my family. You don't even know what I look like. My kid could be on a milk jug and you wouldn't give a damn. Right? Most people don't do that, but they start with the lie and then it just perpetuates on from there. So that's a great takeaway. Right? And it's very easy. Again, most people like honesty, especially when you're in a financial world because they realize they need more money. Right? I work with a lot of, personal trainers. And they're all trying to, how do we talk to clients and stuff? And they're like, well, you get clients that come in that are out of shape or overweight or stuff like that. I'm like, really? Do you think they know? Don't you think they know they're fat? Right? I mean, they're looking in front of the mirror and go, oh my God, I'm perfect. No, they know that. What are you going to lie to them? No, they know. You don't have to lie to them. What'd you get?
So I got moving to the left, be more face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the hit list, what does a good prospect look like for me?
Yep.
Something to think about.
Absolutely. Tell people. It's okay to tell them. Again, if you're in sales, like you probably have family members. Mm-hmm. Have you pitched your family members to help you? Yes. And did they?
Like 3 of them, yes.
Then call the rest of them and say, what the heck? What the heck? Don't they know anybody who in your world? But most people don't, because they're not specific. They don't tell them what they want. When you say, I'm looking for somebody in a church, in a chamber, in a senior facility, I'm looking for a geriatric doctor, here's all the people I want. And when they go through their mental Rolodex, the average person they can help, but you've got to tell them what help looks like. When you say, well, I'm looking for someone who's interested in financial planning. Well, there's a good chance that most people don't know that intimate stuff about the people that they deal with. But if you say, I'm looking for an introduction of somebody who's active in their church, and they go, oh, that's Bob. Well, I just want the introduction. I'll take care of Bob myself. But again, specificity. Don't assume that people will connect the dots, even though in your mind it seems obvious. Terrence.
Yeah.
So a couple, right? So
Mhm.
first, I'm gonna tell my hit list. So when I hit list is only back here, right? And the next hit list is introduction to Buffett. So if anybody has that for my charity, introduction to Buffett, right?
Call the Buffett Foundation. No, really. I mean, call them. Yeah, call them. I got this great idea. This is what I want to do. What's the worst they can say is no? It's amazing how many people are afraid of no, right? There's this huge rejection value. If somebody says no to you, it's not because you are being rejected. You're not. For whatever reason, at that point in time, whatever you do is not something that they want, right? And no doesn't bother me at all. I know that I might have to get 50 no's to get one yes. Well, but here's what I know then. That means if I want a yes, call 50 people. If I want 2 yeses, call 100 people. Right? Don't let that bother you. Sales in general, I often say this to the camera, you know, it's hard. You're frequently alone. You're frequently talking to people that maybe don't, at this point, realize they need what you do. So it's okay. You know, if they say no, say a silent prayer for them. It's amazing how fast they come back.
I love that world leaders solve problems face to face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why that moving to the left, if you connect with somebody on a platform or they want to stay on email, and no, you got to get it, or at least on the phone. If you can't do a face-to-face because of distance or whatever, at least on the phone. I mean, you lose the benefit of all the body language when you're not face-to-face. You lose the benefit of all the tonality and the inflections and all the stuff on the voice if you're not doing it. That's why, if you want to see how powerful this is, do you know what they created almost immediately after creating the text? And emojis. Because there was a time when your phone was a phone, even the cell phones, right? You go back to the BlackBerry days when there wasn't emojis. And because the written word didn't adequately convey what you wanted to say, and people were misinterpreting what was being said on just the words. And that's why they came out with smiley faces and unicorns and glitter and, you know, all the other, you know, 10 zillion things to try to convey the emotion with the words.
All 3 of them like word like this.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I remember seeing that, right? It's just it's this old thing. What'd you get?
BlackBerry are the best phone there. No, I got where you said so no obligations for a lead. Like when you're getting a lead yourself, it just kind of resonated with me. There's not an obligation for them, but when you're giving someone else a lead, you know they're obligated to return the favor.
Will you tell them that?
So that was one that I really I like that you said, and then go to give and not to get. So like we were talking about it in the office, but to serve. Like we're here to serve, not to try to
Absolutely.
get or sell, but more to serve. And then on the newsletter, an everyday a newsletter or a specific target for what you're looking for.
Sure.
Post it.
Well, let me ask the question. Do you specialize in any particular type of thing?
A lot solar and obviously the financial stuff,
Okay.
construction, remodeling. So
Okay.
I do a lot of that stuff, but I know a lot of people that
Okay.
I can put together. So
Sure.
I think I just need to do that more.
Sure. And the thing, and give it a cutesy name. Call it Thanks for the Sun. And a couple times a month you put that out there, and in there you put information about solar and the new things they're coming out with and the changes in the government, and they just extended and increased the amount of solar that was out there. So when you send that to somebody who hasn't bought solar yet, and you put in on your headline or your subject line or whatever, and your Thanks for the Sun newsletter, it's thank President Biden. He just now gave you, instead of what I think it was $2,600, I think you now get what, $3,000?
It's 26% to
30%, right?
Plus the cost of any electrical upgrade if you're.
Yep.
Oh, hell, that's even better.
30% of
Sure.
the income of-
So the person you talked to 6 months ago who doesn't, if you called them and, and just kind of, nag the shit out of him, he's not going to want to come. Send him your newsletter, right? And everybody. And the thing is, you can send it to hundreds of people at a time. Different people will get it at different times. They jump in the market, they jump out of the market. But if they're interested enough in the beginning, this is the way they get your selling message. And then put whatever you think is in there. Industry information, product information, solar information, things are going to be coming down the pike, green initiatives, whatever you think is going to resonate with them. But again, if you went to that person and said, if I was to send you some of my just mindless propaganda, my self-promoting sales message every month, would you be okay with that? What would most people say? Nah, well, I don't want that. Right? So do it. You know what it costs? Nothing. Nothing. Have Terrence show you the one that he gets from me. Really simple. Literally. It just Times New Roman, italicize the headlines, and the rest of it there. And it's not War and Peace. It's maybe a sentence or two on all the headlines. But it's the thing, it forces you to do what you should already be doing. You're an expert in this field. And yet most people never let their sun shine. Nobody knows you're an expert. Right? No. Experts write. They teach. They promote. They communicate. That's what experts do. And it's fun to do, by the way. And although it seems hard, it's really not. Randy.
I disagree with you.
Oh, feel free. I'll take it always. Sure.
The part of helping
Yes.
If I help you, it's because I love you.
I'll take that too.
And understood, but I never expect other people to feel obligated to me. I want them to,
Yes.
I want them to help me because they know I can help solve a problem.
Yes.
They know that I can help solve a problem for a friend.
Hmm?
That whatever my price is, it's worth whatever I do for them.
Oh, I fully agree with that.
But I don't ever want anyone to feel obligated. I don't want my kids to feel obligated. I don't want my neighbor to feel obligated. If I help you, it's because, by golly, I wanted to.
Right. And by the way, and I'm totally cool with that. There are people that I will say, I help knowing that they will never, ever, ever be able to repay me. Never. Ever be able to repay me. And I am fine with that. Amongst all the other things, I'm devoutly Catholic. I believe that there's a religious component. Here's what I want people to be cogent of those. There are people that are energy vampires. There are people that will take and take and take and take from you even when you don't have it to give. So the concern that I always have, and that's why now we're also talking to a situation, in a relationship of commerce, different than a social relationship, that I have to be cogent of how much time I invest in someone until I determine whether they get back. So my control mechanism is if I give something to you, and you don't, and it's of value, and you don't give something to me, I'm absolutely fine with chalking it up to, you know what, I did my best to help humanity. The difference is I'll only do it once. Because we all, like I said before, my relationships are hard fought. Time is the critical element in all of us. And I've seen situations where there are many people in networking environments. You know, I'm sure you've had a friend or a family member where you've done for them and done for them and done for them and done for them, and yet they've never done anything for you, even though your need might have been obvious to everybody. So that's where I make the distinction between a relationship of commerce and something social. And again, there are people that we all do things for that they're never going to be able to repay us. So we don't go into it with that idea. But I'd like to at least get some, possibly. Stephanie.
Well, the thing that I like and would like to know more about is it's never how you close, it's how you open. So this is like does that mean your first impression? What if you said that, and then you went right to blogs. So.
Well, okay, we do an entire session on that, but this is what it would sound like. If you were interested in sales training, this is what it would sound like. I would say, Stephanie, this is what's going to happen, because I do this all the time. You and I are going to sit down, all right, for about an hour. You're going to ask me some questions. I'm going to ask you some questions. And at the end of that, we're going to decide we're going to make a $1,000 decision, because that's the program that is one you're most likely going to be involved. But can I ask you a question? And you would say, of course. And I'd say, besides yourself, who else would be involved in making that decision? And you'd say, well, of course, my husband, Randy. I'd say, well, I'll tell you what, when we get together, would you be okay if Randy joined us? And at the end of our hour, one of two things is going to happen. Either A, it's going to make sense to do business together, and I'll have all the paperwork and everything there, and we'll sign a few places, and we'll be done. Or it doesn't make sense for us to do business together, and I'm going to say thank you for your time, goodbye. You okay with that?
Yeah.
I've said that 5,000 times. You know what everybody says? Sure. But what have I now said? Now I know who else needs to be there. And we're not going to meet I'm not going to do a one-legger with you if I know Randy needs to be there. We're going to make a $1,000 decision that we're going to decide at the end of that 1 hour. So I don't come back. There is no second meeting. I don't come back. I tell you up front, because I think you're an intelligent woman, what we're going to talk about openly and honestly. And at the end of that hour, if it makes sense, great. And if it doesn't, I'm okay with that too. So now I'm condensing an entire session into literally 3 minutes. But the idea is if you set everything up in the beginning, then the close is a foregone conclusion. The mistake a lot of people make is you don't set the agenda. You'll be like, okay, well, let's get together and talk. Well, I do that with my grandsons, and I go nowhere with them too, right? So the idea is that when we get together, what do you want to talk about? Well, you want to talk about blah-bitty, blah-bitty, blah-bitty. Great, we'll talk about that, right? I want to talk about life insurance, tax mitigation, and yes, exactly. All right, okay, thank you, Terrence. When we get together, I'll make sure we talk about that. Now, we're not going to talk about the 50 other things that are in the financial world because Terrence doesn't care. Terrence only cares about those 3 things. I say, you know what, Terrence, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Let me share with you what I need to take from the meeting for it to be a successful meeting for me. I need to know who makes a decision in the Terrence world, who needs to be there, what roles they play, right? I got to tell them how much the decision's for. right? Terrence, if we decide to move ahead together, I'm going to encourage you to bring your checkbook. You're going to give me a check for $250. We're going to get started, right? Because if he needs his checkbook, I'm going to tell him on the phone before he comes, not when he's in front of me and didn't know he needed to bring his checkbook. So when I say it's never how you close, it's always how you open, most people do a poor job of opening. Therefore, if whatever you're doing requires 4 appointments, all right? So whatever you do takes 4 appointments, tell them. So Bob, the first week when we meet on appointment number 1, we're going to talk about blobbity, blobbity, blobbity. You're going to get me these 5 things. I'm going to take them back to my office. The second time we meet for about an hour, probably about a week after that, I'll bring the findings that we had based on whatever it is that you gave me in week number 1. We'll fine tune a little bit. I'll go back to my office the 3rd time. We'll put the proposal together, would have all the details. When we come back the 4th time, generally the following week, you and the missus are going to need to be there. We're going to review the proposal, and if it makes sense, we're going to go ahead with it. And if it doesn't, I'm going to say thank you, goodbye. You okay with that?
So then the open is where you have your big plan.
Well, you tell them. You have to rehearse. Sure. Will you guys be okay for 5 more minutes? Okay. Can we keep them on for 5 more minutes? Okay, 5 more minutes. All right, I'm going to give you a story. I'm going to go a long way to make a point, but it's going to make sense in the end. Okay? Back in the 60s, all right, again, it's 1961. Back in the 60s, dental things, and I got 2 broken teeth, and I'm just a wuss not to get them fixed. The problem being was, at that time, when I was 3 and 4 and 5 and started going to the dentist was a scary place. You guys are young, right? It was all like unicorns and stuff for you guys, but it wasn't when I was young. When I was young, it was like white tile floors, white walls, scary clowns, right? Nurse in white, she's got the hat on that makes her 7.5 feet tall. And we would go to the dentist, which was Dr. Smith's, which was literally at the end of my street. And we would go there. And when you're 5 or 6 years old, first of all, you're terrified of the dentist. Even though you haven't had a bad experience, you've just heard about how everybody hates dentists. So I would be the 4-year-old, 5-year-old Don, and I would go into the stark white, scary dentist office, scary clowns and stuff. And then I would ask my dad. I'd be like, Dad, how come this doesn't, because it was vinyl, how come this doesn't look like our couch? And my dad's a comedian. He'd be like, well, that's so you can wash the blood off easily. Right? Which, of course, freaks out the 4-year-old Don, 5-year-old Don even worse. I'm like, yeah, Dad, we really got to work on your parenting skills, right? And then the nurse comes out, right? And she's 7 feet tall. And she grabs you can't take your kids back there, right? And she's got me by the hand, and I'm like spinning, like on the top of her hand as we walk down the door. Now, and we get to the room. Now, I'm smart enough to know that operatory on the door has something to do with operation, and that's bad. Right? Even at 5. And now we go into this room, right? And now I'm crying, so they let my dad in, right? So we sit down in the chair, and everything looks foreign to me. And I'm like, Dad, they have a little sink. And Dad goes, yeah, that's where you split out the blood. Dad, we really, really got to work on these things for you, all right? But there next to me is all the implements of torture. There's things, I swear to God, there was a saw, right? I'm going, what are you going to use a saw for? Right? But at that time, that's the way medical science was. But in the early 70s, right, the American Dental Association said, you know what? We really got to lighten up our image. Okay, everybody hates dentists, right? Everybody hates dentists. Why? We're not any worse or the vast majority of the time when you come to the dentist, nothing happens. They just check you out, x-rays, here's your toothbrush, go. All right? It's not always sawing and drilling. And they said, well, what we got to do is we got to make these places look more like the houses of the people they come from. Put it in an aquarium. Have fabric furniture. God forbid, take the scary clowns away. Nobody wanted those to start with, right? Have a little place where the kids have tables and crayons and toys and little chairs that make them feel comfortable, right? And when you take them back, don't be real sinister. And because when they would put the kid in the chair before, the doctor would come in and go whoosh, with the X-rays and wouldn't even look at you, right? He'd be like talking to himself and talking to the nurse, and there you are shaking in the chair. Dr. Meza, who became my dentist in the early 70s, he subscribed to this. I'm going a long way to make a point. Follow me. He subscribed to this philosophy. So when I went back, now keep in mind, I'm only like 10 or 11 at this point. So he would take you back, and here's what he would do. Before he looked at the screen, looked away, all the stuff was covered up, right? Everything was all covered up. And he would look at me and say, Don, how you feeling? Any problems with your teeth, anything like that? And I'd be like, no, everything's good. He goes, well, listen, I did see a little cavity I'd like to take care of, right? But let me share with you what's going to happen. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to give you a very, very small shot. It's going to feel like a mosquito bite, all right? That's going to deaden the area. We're going to wait, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. We're going to come back. We're going to give you a couple more shots in the area. You won't even feel those, all right? Wait a couple minutes, 5, 10 minutes, come back. We're going to drill out the thing. We're going to pack it in with some amalgam. We're going to wait maybe 10 minutes, make sure you're going to be on your way in about a half hour. Okay. All right, that makes sense, right? 10-year-old, right? So he would come and he says, remember how we said about the mosquito bite, right? Zip. Well, that wasn't too bad, right? Comes back again 5 minutes later. Remember how I said you're going to get 3 more, but you're not going to feel it? Bing, 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 bing. Didn't even feel it, right? He goes, you might feel a little bit of vibration from the drill. It's not going to hurt. You're not going to feel any pain whatsoever. You might get, but what he did was he talked me through everything. So it wasn't scary. So I'm going a long way to make a point. But in whatever it is you do it all the time. These people may never do it ever. You might be the first person, like if somebody's never done a financial plan or sat down and looked seriously. They've never done this. You do it all the time. So you need to rehearse with them what the process looks like. So Mr. and Mrs. Jones, when we meet the first time, this is what we do. And then when we meet the second time, this is what we do. And then and here's what you got to do, right? Because everybody plays. And then we meet the third time, this is what we do. And the fourth time, we're going to blah, 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 blah. And if it makes sense, I'll bring the paper. And by the way, never invoice, right? Never contract. Paperwork or agreement. You can see either one, right? I'll bring out the paperwork. You'll sign in a few places. I'll accept a check for $250. We get started, right? Or you always have to give them the out. Or if it doesn't make any sense, I say goodbye and that's it. We're done. So I said it's okay to say yes. I said it's okay to say no. What have I not said it's okay to say? Maybe think about it, sleep on it. No. That's the stuff that kills salespeople. And that's why I say it's never how you close, it's always how you open. Because I tell them up front what the process looks like. And I tell everything, every step of the way, this is the decision you can make. And these are the only decisions you can make. Because once we get started, we can't go halfway through and decide to think on it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? If you're not ready, you're not ready. This isn't the time to get started, right? If you need to think about whether or not you need to safeguard your family in the event of your death, you have other problems, right? You know, your family should be looking for a rope and a branch to throw it over for you, weasel, right? So the idea is, no, I'm not saying say that. I would say that, but not you, okay? But the idea is that whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you sell, you just explain the process. Because these people might be uncomfortable. They've never done it. They've never given people this information. They've never been asked these questions before. But when you tell them up front, these are the things we're going to talk about. What do you want to talk about? Right? Whatever it is that you want to talk about, those are the only things we focus on. But I have rights too. Right? So I'm going to say, all right, Steffi, let me share with you what I need to take from the meeting for it to be an effective meeting for me. And I tell you whatever I want. I'm going to need you to bring your paperwork. I'm going to need you to do this. Whatever I need you to do for it to be an effective meeting for me, I got to tell you on the phone up front. And if we're going to fight, if there's going to be a problem, well, that's where we talk about the problem. I don't want to invest, 10 hours of my time to find if it's not going to go anywhere. Right? One of the hallmarks of all the training I do, if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? Yeah, right away, exactly. Well, so I might as well tell you all the things that I want right in the beginning, because if you have an issue with them, here's when we're going to talk about them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good, good. Anything else for you?
That's good.
Perfect. Cody, we're going to end up with you.
Well, the hit list, I really like. I want to add
Well, you've seen the copies of it because you've been in a couple of things.
Yeah.
Take them, yeah.
I'd like to add on to that. So I met with husband and wife team, and a few people working with them, kind of on a referral basis.
Mm-hmm.
And he, after meeting her, then sat down, met with him and her, and he said, all right. And we went through, kind of explaining different stuff, explained kind of my process, their stuff. He goes, all right, put that all on one page for me. He goes, I want your process, all your prospects, and all their areas you can work with those prospects on, and the people you don't want. I want it all on one page.
Oh, I love that.
And he says, so.
Yeah, you'll sell that guy every time because you give him what he wants.
He said, give me that one page. I know exactly everything. I can sit there, look at it, say, this is what's going to happen when you meet with this person. want not to send you, and
I love that.
we're done.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that guy, that sale you can make every single time because that's the guy who says yes to everything, right? All he's saying is just tell me what you got. Tell me what it is. I'll find somebody for you. You just have to tell me what the process is. And that's why it's interesting. The reason, and this is to the camera, you know, the reason our clients double and triple their business is because they understand the selling. It's like, you know, I want you to be an expert at what you do, of course. But in most cases, until somebody signs on the dotted line, you need to be an expert at what I do. And I often say nothing happens until somebody sells something. So.
I have one of those.
Exactly. And I, by the way, and I will tell you, so many people are willing to help. People are wonderful. They really are willing to help you. And that's why I always say prime to pump. If I do something for you first, you mentioned about the love part of it. It's interesting when I give somebody a lead, especially one that manifests itself in a sale, they have a very different feeling for me at that point in time because now I'm helping them further their interest. I'm doing everything I can to help their process get better and their people get better and their cash register to ring. And by de facto, I believe that the rising tide raises all ships. I believe that if everyone around me is better, by de facto, I am too. And that's my opinion. That's the abundance philosophy that there's an unlimited amount of money, sunshine, smiles, laughter, everything. So anyways, we went a couple minutes beyond time. Thank you so much for everyone. So if you were joining us on Facebook Live, thank you so much. If you're joining us on YouTube Live, thank you. If you're joining us on Zoom, thank you. And if you're joining us on our Vimeo archive, thank you so much as well. It's an absolute privilege to do what we do every week. So thank you so much. I wish everybody good selling. Bye-bye. There we go. So how was that?